Good morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity to provide testimony today in support of three separate bills. I'll be brief. The first bill is number 19 on your agenda, Senate Bill 718, an act naming the Route 7 bridge crossing over Little Brook in New Milford in honor of the late Officer Donald Hasiak. Officer Hasiak was a New Milford resident and Danbury police officer who was struck and killed by a motorist while he was riding his bicycle to work last summer. I respectfully ask that members of the Transportation Committee vote favorably on this legislation in recognition that such a tribute is warranted. Item number 2 is number 11 on your agenda, House Bill 5102, an act requiring the Commissioner of Transportation to attend certain public hearings concerning railroad crossings at grade. This bill is intended to heighten the awareness of the Department of Transportation as to safety concerns being expressed by residents regarding the deteriorating conditions of at-grade rail crossings. We have a rail crossing on Route 202 in the town of New Milford, and I would say the New Milford legislative delegation and local officials have spent the better part of 2 to 3 years trying to get that crossing permanently repaired so the 17,000 cars that travel over it each and every day aren't losing car parts. And I think Senator Rohrabaugh had said the fillings came right out of his teeth. So I hope you'll review that bill and act favorably on that. Last and not least, number 12 on your agenda, support of House Bill 6126, an act authorizing bicyclists to cross the Housatonic Railroad at grade in New Milford. Obviously not the same at grade crossing. But this legislation was introduced on behalf of the town and is intended to allow for a legal and safe means for bicyclists and pedestrians to cross railroad tracks which run through a town-owned park called Sega Meadows. Sega Meadows was purchased by the town in the early 1990s, and what happened? Coincidentally, at the time, officials asked the legislative delegation at that time to introduce legislation to allow for an at-grade crossing for motor vehicles with the intention of building Little League baseball fields on that property. The town has since abandoned those ideas, and it's used primarily for passive recreation. And in their efforts to create a greenway as well as a bike path, we're back again this year, hoping that we can convince you of the worthiness of installing an at-grade crossing without the expense of the gates and the signals. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Yes, my distinguished co-chair, vice chair, ranking member, sorry.
Thank you, sir.
I'm new here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Representative Chapin.
Good morning.
Thank you for bringing these matters to the forefront for the Transportation Committee. I'd like to particularly take note of the rail crossing issue. As you well know, it is not a new issue. Not only is it, in my view, unsafe, we have attempted to address it with the Department of Transportation in prior sessions. I suggest that it's unfortunate that we would have to take further action, but I do think it's important that we elevate the prioritization of that for it to occur, because I know the very rail crossing that you're making reference to in New Milford, but there's others in our region, including one on Route 7 in Kent, including Route 25 in Hollyville section of Newtown, that are in very sad disrepair, and it has become not just a nuisance, it's really a safety issue. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Representative Chapin, I was outside. Were you talking about the railroad crossings? Is that what you're...
Yes.
And, you know, you bring up a very good point, because, you know, what I've noticed, too, is sometimes we do these overlay of patching and so forth for asphalt, and believe it or not, we jump right over those, you know what I mean, when we come to those railroad crossings and so forth. So, I mean, I'm hoping that there's ways that we could try to implement monies to fix those crossings, because they are deteriorating, and they're falling apart, and they're terrible on the vehicles, as we know, when you try to cross them and so forth. So I'm glad to see you put some proposals ahead of us here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments?
Just that I share your concern for Senator Rohrbeck's dental health, so we'll be sure to act on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.